legend has it that this is the very spot where Kupe, the great Maori explorer, first made landfall around 1200 years ago. When he arrived here at the Hokianga, he became the very first New Zealander. But the story of New Zealand begins a long time before Kupe first felt these sands beneath his feet. This country of ours came into existence a long way from here, as part of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana land, which later formed Lala land, which broke away from Australia, floating south to eventually become New Zealand. The first migration was one of Maori. They came in their mighty waka. Then came the great white explorers, Abel and James. Waves of settlers followed, bringing with them booze, syphilis, and Toby jugs. They came from England, the Americas, and from Asia. These visitors brought with them the very best genes, genes that when combined would form the basis of a superspecies. Of course, there was no welcoming party for Kupe, just the deafening cacophony of bird song. And certainly he could have never foreseen that in the future his descendants would be paid to welcome other great chiefs who would not arrive by sea but from the sky in giant steel waka.
So would they be braced for this welcome by the Maori party? Would they know?
They will have, because my word, if you just came down there and saw that lot, you'd want to get back on the plane and fly home, which is the idea of the hugger, actually. No, the Americans will have gone through the protocol of this by the nanosecond.
And it looks like we have President Bill Clinton appearing now with daughter Chelsea.
Described by his own wife as a hard dog to keep on the porch, President Clinton kept his plus-size predilections in check when welcomed by our most famous chunky honey, Jenny Shipley. The great American chief was treated to a carefully orchestrated smorgasbord of kapahaka, shirtless Maori, and standing around. It was a far cry from the shambles that awaited the Beatles when they stopped by in 1964. The mayor, Dove Meyer Robinson, had done wonders for Auckland's sewerage problems, but he had no idea of how to control Beatlemania. "21 years later, this would be the epicentre of the Queen Street riot.
We're going to have a performance for your entertainment by the Maori County Concert Party, led by Abby Walker.
It's hard to know what Kupe would have thought of this civic reception or of the Fab Four's kapahaka appreciation. He may have even run screaming from the giant papier-mâché Ringo, which would surely have looked to him like a mighty taniwha. This statue of Sir Dovemeyer Robinson commemorates that rather awkward moment here in what is now Aotea Square. Despite the bungled reception, Robbie became fast friends with the Fab Four and exchanged Christmas cards with the group right up until his death.
Dear Robbie, thanks again for the lovely gift. But Yoko and I are now vegetarians, so I gave it to Ringo. He said the chops were just lovely. Good luck with the sewerage. Merry Christmas, John Lennon.
So, why do visitors make us feel so uneasy, so insignificant? It's as if we're repulsed by their foreignness, even as we firmly place our lips on their arse, possibly inserting the tongue gently.
He's even boring.
If famous white people made us feel uneasy, how would a black Muslim boxer affect us? Karen Sims spent 10 days with the greatest when he toured here in 1979.
Are you trying to lose weight?
Gotta lose 20 pounds. Gotta lose 20 pounds. Put down again. See how we champions get? I hope it's somebody asked me, was it gonna be twins or boys or girls? But I'm the greatest of all time. After me, there will come no more.
He may be the greatest, but he still has normal weaknesses, and one of them is food. He particularly likes chili, fried chicken, spaghetti, pancakes with syrup, and apple crumble.
But there was the usual Ali farce of Ali sulking in a hotel room with, he had a wife by then. Yes, he was on to number 4 by then, 5, I think. Very pretty girl.
His views on women are old-fashioned, to say the least. He could be seen as the world champion male chauvinist.
I got a beautiful. See, we live in a Western society where women can walk around with their titties out. So, Islamic religion, first, the woman is respected 100%. Dogs and cats show their titties. Humans hide their titties.
Sims, for her part, kept her titties well covered, but was clearly uncomfortable with the bombastic boxer.
The greatest warrior, Cleopatra, got to him.
There was the real Ali and there was the public one. And the real Ali was just almost surly, just sort of mulching around. He only came alive when he had an audience.
But as we'll soon see, Ali wasn't the greatest visitor to come to New Zealand.
Basically, we are all weak for the pretty women.
Not all visitors to New Zealand liked what they saw. When the Dalai Lama arrived here at Christchurch Airport, he refused to leave the plane. It's said that he felt an evil presence and ordered the pilot to continue on to Dunedin.
Christchurch International Airport, New Zealand, the 27th of September, 1974. For the first time ever, the ruler of Iran has come to New Zealand. His Imperial Majesty Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Shahanshah Arimir, and Her Imperial Majesty the Shah Banu Farah Pahlavi are visitors to New Zealand for 4 days.
The Shah of Iran may have been a corrupt puppet of the American Empire, but he was a stylish corrupt puppet. And his wife was pure Lady Penelope. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi's Shahanshah Aramir's days in Iran were numbered. The Ayatollah Khomeini was on the rise, but for a few glorious days, he tasted the delights of God's own.
We want to thank you on behalf of the Empress and myself.
And there was something about Iran, I think, that appealed particularly because here was a guy who was dressed in a suit and looked like a regular guy, didn't have a towel on his head, and it was a bit more familiar.
He may have presided over a brutal dictatorship back home, but here the Shah was charming and gracious. As a backward and stupid people, we cream ourselves over any form of royalty. Charles and Diana were particular favourites, and were given the honour of inspecting our in-goal areas. It was clear that the young princess was far from happy during her visit. Perhaps it was because Charles was unable to satisfy her in the marital bedroom.
Sorry, I haven't yet worked out a method of splitting my wife in half.
And even though she carried on like a right old vinegar tits, Diana had plenty of fans in Aotearoa.
I think her dress sense is really good. Yeah, she's good. She's good. And I think she's got a lovely figure, even though lots of people say she's too skinny. I think it's lovely.
She walks really well.
She does. She's very stylish,
Unlike Charles and Diana, Queen Victoria never came to New Zealand, and even if she did, she wouldn't have been our most important visitor. That honour wouldn't go to any head of state. In fact, it wouldn't even go to a human. Our most important visitor was the sheep. Our ovine forebears, more than any other visitor, shaped the future of New Zealand. Using carbon dating, scientists have proven that sheep were here well before the Maori, possibly as early as 150 BC.
It's one of the great omissions in New Zealand history. We have conveniently forgotten that the sheep were here first. And I think there's an element of political correctness in there.
At the Nuclear Sciences Laboratory in Wellington, scientists feed pieces of bone, shell and charcoal into the carbon dating chain.
There have been many myths about how sheep got here. One even had it that they were unwanted pets that were thrown off steamboats. But more probable is the theory that the sheep swam here, either from the Eastern Pacific or from China and the islands to the north of New Zealand.
With cloven hooves churning through furious seas, and only their fleece between cold southern seas. From Pacific Isles, some say far-off lands, the great sheep migration swam lambs, ewes and rams. Wool, animal and dry, taste the survivors and each mutton pie. The story of the Great Sheep Migration has even been immortalised in the Japanese feature film Akira and Jumbo.
Come, Akira, our journey is at an end.
Master, I am tired from the swimming.
Akira and Jumbo's mighty swim was over, but the adventure was just beginning.
Don't eat grass.
Although we have long made jokes about it, sex with sheep was uncommon, except among farmers, miners, whalers, and members of Her Majesty's Constabulary. Remarkably, this man talked candidly about his sexual experience with sheep on the NZBC programme Focus.
What sort of sheep was she? She was a merino Romney cross, and she had a beautiful coat, very long. Woolly. Longer than you'd expect to see that time of year.
Today, tourists who are mostly Japs flock to see our sheep in great flocks, much like sheep, but with pockets filled with highly desirable foreign currency. Only 60 years ago, we were fighting these people in the bloody theatres of the Pacific. Now, they're shooting back at us. Not with guns, but with cameras. Tourists come to experience the fresh green breast of New Zealand and enjoy our environment. But our early attempts at ecotourism were less successful. In the 1950s, tourists in Kaikoura could pay a small fee for the privilege of beating seals in their natural environment. The scheme was only scrapped after swimmers at a neighbouring bay complained of blood on their togs. Thankfully, today's ecotourism is much more sophisticated.
Here in the Marlborough Sounds, tourists pay up to $1,500 just to pop one of these lovely Hector's dolphins.
And the byproduct is really quite delicious. But our taste in food was not always this exotic. For decades, our food was among the worst in the OECD, and eating out was almost unheard of. But that was about to change.
Our eating is a cross-cultural experience. Food surrounds us. We're overwhelmed by choices. Health food, Asian food, natural food, and of course, wickedly indulgent food. Restaurants now compete to tempt the jaded gourmet into odysseys of extravagance.
At long last, the days of meat and 2 veg were behind us. But it wasn't fancy continental cuisine that would eventually steal the hearts of Kiwis. It's a Chinese takeaway now, but this is the historic site of the first ever Kentucky Fried Chicken in New Zealand. And when it opened here in 1971, it was as if a spaceship full of fried chicken had landed amongst the natives. At the time, Colonel Sanders was the most important man in the world, a sort of Dalai Lama of the deep fry.
Here you are, somebody spooning on.
But no one was expecting him to be such a wowzer.
So I tell them to lay off with tobacco, smoking, because that'll give you emphysema of the lungs, lung cancer, or coronary troubles of the heart. And so it's just not a good thing to do. And then alcoholic beverages, why do we? Now my scholarships. We've given out over $1 million worth of scholarships to colleges and high school children. And if they start smoking or using alcoholic beverages when they're on scholarship, we cut it off right there. Because I haven't got any money for them to burn up, let's see.
According to his eldest daughter, Margaret, the Colonel was more interested in breasts and thighs than a wing. When it came to sex, she said that the teetotaler and non-smoker indulged himself to the full. At one time, he even kept a mistress in the same house as his wife. There was no such scandal when it came to Ronald MacDonald. Although he may have been bi-curious, he was hardly a horn dog. The first Golden Arches opened in Porirua in 1977.
Dozens of cars outside an emporium crowned with golden arches, a glossy addition to the landscape. Preparing new crew for the opening involved 600 hours of intensive training.
All right, your customers all set to go. All right, girls, what we want to see is smiles, warmth, personality. Don't let your customers take more than 2 steps without you greeting them. Come forward.
But as we'll soon see, not all our visitors were greeted with such a smile. Not all visitors to New Zealand have been welcome. Today, we have machines to deal with the gorse, but it hasn't always been the case. Believe it or not, this stuff was brought here quite deliberately by early settlers.
I hate the sight of gorse, it's prickly and that, when you go with your mates into the, into the bush to play games, you get all those little spikes into you and that.
Gorse was originally introduced as an aphrodisiac.
Therapeutic properties of gorse and is guaranteed to reinvigorate the forces which govern the dictates of the marital boudoir.
And later as a contraceptive. But despite its uses, gorse, like many of our introduced species, soon got out of hand. And now it's one of our most serious pests. Along with gorse, we've had to deal with other unwanted visitors: possums, rabbits, and more recently, backpackers. These pests bring with them diseases and despoil our environment. At first, these introduced species may seem harmless, but if left unchecked, they can overlock themselves into the very fabric of our society, and the consequences can be shockingly catastrophic.
Are you ready?
I was born ready. Get down, get funky, everybody do the blue monkey.
Within a few short years, this omnipresent infomercial queen from Wolverhampton had spread like so many of her luminous spheres to infect every corner of our nation.
Very smart, very smart. Blue monkey!
It's amazing to think that in just over a millennium, we've come from Coupe's landfall to Suzanne Paul. Just two among the many who have shaped this country, our Aotearoa land of visitors.
Pacific Isles, some say far-off lands, the great sheep migration swam lambs, ewes and rams. Wool, wool, damn my wool down, bloated and floating, some left to drown. Wool, addled and dry, taste the survivors and each mutton pie.